Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're tackling a text that I think, a lot of people might initially underestimate. It's called The Mechanism of Monopoly Power.
Right.
When you hear a title like that, you sort of brace yourself for a really dry academic lecture, right? Antitrust laws, the Gilded Age, something like that.
For sure. But the source material, and this is why we picked it, it bypasses all that jargon. It presents monopoly power not as a legal definition, but, well, as a story about leverage.
It really is.
It's a study in leverage. The source just strips away all the complexity of corporations and regulations and boils it all down to two people, Sean and Annie.
Sean and Annie.
And by using these two characters, the text just exposes the psychological and the structural shifts that happen when a market creates a king.
Exactly. And we should probably clarify, we are not talking about board games here.
No.
We're talking about a really fundamental shift in how value is exchanged. So our mission today is to unpack this specific model. We're going to look at the transition from a competitive market to a monopoly.
And we have to dissect that claim from the source, the one that says monopolies are inherently lazy.
Yes. And then analyze the fortress of barriers that protects them.
And if we do this right, we have to land on this idea of artificial scarcity, because that's where the story of Sean and Annie stops being, a theoretical exercise.
And starts explaining why things in our actual lives cost what they cost.
Precisely.
Okay, so let's set the board. The source introduces us to Sean, the seller, and Annie, the buyer. And to really get the dysfunction of a monopoly, the text first makes us look at a healthy market.
A functioning one.
It introduces Sean as a price taker.
Right. And price taker is such a crucial distinction here. In this first scenario, Sean's selling lemonade. The whole text uses this lemonade stand analogy, but he has zero control. Absolutely none.
He's at the mercy of the market.
Completely.
Yeah.
Because if he wakes up one morning and decides, you know what, my lemonade is now $50 a glass, he doesn't get rich. He
goes out of business.
Instantly. The mechanism here is exit. Annie has the ultimate power in a market economy, which is the power to just walk away.
She can go to a neighbor's stand.
Or a different store. Or just drink water. She has alternatives. And because she has alternatives, Sean is forced to keep his prices grounded in reality. He has to take the price the market will bear.
It's a discipline mechanism. His inability to dictate terms is what keeps him honest. But the real deep dive begins when that switch gets flipped. The source asks us to imagine that all those alternatives, they just vanish. And Sean transforms from a price taker into a price maker.
This is the critical juncture. The price maker doesn't just react to the market, he is the market. He dictates it.
So in this scenario, Annie's options are gone.
Systematically removed. She can't go to the neighbor. She can't find a substitute. If she wants lemonade, she must deal with Sean.
And the text makes this point that this isn't just a financial shift, it's psychological.
Oh, absolutely. The entire incentive structure of his business just inverts. He doesn't need to woo the customer anymore. In a competitive market, every transaction is a kind of seduction, You have to convince the buyer you're better than the other guy.
But when you're a monopoly,
the transaction becomes coercion. You pay because you have no other choice. And that leads us to that really provocative word the source uses. The lazy business model.
I found this part so insightful because you usually imagine monopolists as these ruthless, hyperactive tycoons, always crushing rivals.
Like Rockefeller or something.
Exactly. But the text argues the defining characteristic of a secure monopoly is actually just lethargy.
It creates a lethargy of quality. And it makes perfect sense when you think about it. The source uses the example of a little cocktail umbrella.
Okay.
In a competitive market, Sean puts the umbrella in the drink, he chills the glass, he perfects the recipe. Why does he do all that?
To differentiate himself. That little umbrella is the delight factor. It's the thing that keeps Annie from walking down the street to the other stand.
Precisely. But if Sean is a price maker, that umbrella is mathematically irrational.
What do you mean?
Well, it costs money to buy the umbrellas. It takes time to put them in the glass. If Annie has to buy the lemonade anyway, whether it has an umbrella or not, then every single cent he spends on that umbrella is just wasted profit.
So the rational move for him is to degrade the product to the absolute minimum viable standard.
Exactly. They stop optimizing for the customer's happiness and start optimizing purely for their own margins. And the source links this directly to the stagnation of innovation. It's not just about the garnish.
It's about the technology behind the product.
Yes. This is that whipping concept the text brings up.
The idea that Competition is like a whip on the back of a business, forcing it to move forward.
It's a vivid image, but it's accurate. Innovation is incredibly expensive. It's risky. You have to burn cash on R&D, retool factories, risk total failure.
And companies do it because they're scared.
They are terrified. Terrified that if they don't upgrade, a competitor will, and they'll become obsolete. Fear is the mother of invention in this context.
But the monopoly creates a world without fear.
The safety bubble, yeah. If Sean's using a lemon squeezer from 1990, and it still, gets the juice out, he has zero financial incentive to invest in a new hydraulic press. Why would he?
He captures the customer either way.
So the source argues that monopolies become these museums of outdated technology simply because it's cheaper to stay the same than it is to improve.
It really reframes the whole idea of efficiency. We always hear that big companies are efficient, but the source suggests they're only efficient at one thing: extracting profit.
Not at producing value.
Which brings us to the big question. If Sean is just sitting there, charging ridiculous prices for lukewarm, umbrella-free lemonade, making a killing, why doesn't the market just fix it?
The market entry problem.
Right. Logically, those high profits should be like blood in the water. Some savvy investor, let's call him Mike, should see Sean and immediately open a rival stand, offer a better product, and just steal all his customers.
That's how capitalism is supposed to work, in theory.
But it doesn't.
It doesn't, because of what the source material calls the fortress, the specific barriers to entry that stop Mike from ever even setting up shop.
And there are 3 distinct walls in this fortress.
Right, and they kind of escalate. The first one is just high startup costs.
And this is where the text moves beyond lemonade stands and starts talking about things like railways or power grids.
Yeah, the analogy has to expand to the real world here. You're talking about capital intensity. If Sean runs a railway, the cost to compete isn't just buying a train, it's laying thousands of miles of track.
Buying up all the land rights, building stations.
The price of admission is just too high for almost anyone. It's a risk assessment problem. Mike might hate Sean's train service, but he probably doesn't have $10 billion lying around to replicate it.
It creates a natural monopoly.
Essentially, yes. He's protected by the sheer scale of his operation. He's too big to fight.
Okay, so that's the financial wall. But what if Mike is wealthy? He has the capital, he shows up, ready to build, but then he hits wall number 2.
Patents and licenses.
This is where the state gets involved.
The state becomes an active participant in protecting Sean's monopoly. The text points out that often a monopoly isn't just a market outcome, it's a government grant.
It's interesting that the text frames patents as a barrier, not just as, intellectual property protection.
Well, in the context of monopoly power, that's exactly what they are. If the government gives Sean a patent on the only way to make lemonade or an exclusive license to sell drinks in that town, Mike is blocked.
It doesn't matter if his recipe is better.
Doesn't matter if he has the money. The law itself explicitly forbids him from competing.
It shifts the battlefield from the market to the courtroom. Sean doesn't have to innovate anymore.
He just has to litigate or lobby. The source implies that maintaining these legal protections becomes a huge part of the business model. You spend your resources protecting your exclusivity, not improving your product.
Which is a perfect segue to the third and final barrier. And this one feels like the most absolute.
It's the physical chokehold. Control of resources. The text asks us to imagine that Sean doesn't just sell lemonade.
He owns all the lemons.
He's bought every single lemon grove in the entire region.
At that point, the game is just over.
Completely. You can invent around a patent. You can, in theory, raise the capital to build a rival railway, but you cannot create raw materials out of thin air.
So if Sean controls the inputs, the lithium for batteries, the rare earth metals, the lemons, he controls everything.
He controls the entire market. It creates a physical impossibility for competition to exist.
So the fortress is complete. You've got the motive capital, the walls of the law, and the gatekeepers controlling the resources. Sean is safe.
And he can be as lazy and as expensive as he wants. And that brings us to the darkest part of this whole deep dive, the actual cost to society.
The concept of artificial scarcity.
Yes.
This is the part that I think feels the most counterintuitive. You'd think a business wants to sell as much as possible, right?
Yeah.
More volume equals more success.
That's true in a competitive market where you're trying to capture market share. But Sean isn't sharing the market. He owns it, so his goal shifts.
He wants to maximize profit per unit.
Exactly. And the source explains that the way a monopolist does this is by intentionally restricting output. He produces less than he is capable of producing.
So he leaves the factory running at, say, 60% capacity.
On purpose.
On purpose. By restricting the supply of lemonade, he ensures that demand always outstrips availability. He creates a permanent state of shortage.
Which keeps the price at a premium.
It creates an equilibrium that is great for him, but terrible for the market as a whole. And this is where we get to that idea of deadweight loss.
Right, and deadweight loss isn't just about Annie paying higher prices, it's about something much worse.
It's about lost value. It's about all the transactions that never even happen.
Okay, explain that.
Imagine there are people in the town who would happily buy lemonade for $5. That's a fair price. It covers Sean's costs and gives him a decent profit.
But he's not selling it for $5. No. He's restricted the supply to keep the price at $10. So all those people who would have paid $5, they just don't buy anything. They go thirsty.
So the lemon isn't squeezed, the drink isn't sold, the thirst isn't quenched. That economic activity, it just evaporates.
That is the tragedy of the monopoly mechanism. It's not just a transfer of wealth from Annie to Sean, though it is that. It is a net destruction of wealth for everyone.
And on top of that, you have all the resources wasted just maintaining the fortress. The money Sean spends on lawyers to sue Mike, or on buying up land he never even plans to use.
Just to deny it to others, that's rent-seeking behavior. The economy creates this entire industry of gatekeeping. Instead of engineers building better lemonade stands, you have armies of people building higher walls.
It's a huge drain on societal progress.
It absolutely is.
So to wrap this all up, let's just retrace the path we took. We started in a normal market where Annie had the power of exit.
That kept Sean humble. Then we saw the shift to price maker, where the lack of alternatives allowed Sean to become lazy. No more innovation, no more little umbrellas.
Then we looked at the fortress capital, law, and resources. That keeps anyone else from challenging him.
And finally, we saw the strategy of artificial scarcity, where the monopolist intentionally produces less to charge more, causing a net loss for all of society.
It's an incredibly powerful framework. And I think it leaves us and you listening with a very specific challenge.
I think the challenge is to start looking at the scarcity in your own life. We're so used to thinking things are expensive because they're rare or hard to make.
But the price maker concept asks you to question that assumption.
Right. Is that life-saving drug actually that expensive to manufacture? Or is its scarcity completely artificial?
Is your internet bill high because the service is so advanced or because you have no other choice?
Exactly. If a monopoly's main goal is to produce less to charge more, where are you paying a premium for a shortage that was just decided on in a boardroom? Where are you, Annie, standing in line, accepting a worse product for a higher price simply because the exit door has been bricked up?
That's the question to carry with you this week. Don't just look at the price tag, look at the power dynamic behind it. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.